Let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this another moment that we are here, your children, to we are going to spend one more time in your sanctuary, dear God. Father, we pray, dear Lord, for your presence to be among us, your children. And we pray, dear Lord, as Pastor Cowan present, Lord, you will touch his brain cell, you will touch his lips, dear Heavenly Father, and I pray, dear God, that each and every one of us will have a receptive heart to receive your word. Dear Father, we pray that you will cramp and paralyze every plans of the adversary. Be with those who are on their way. We are asking the Lord to grant them journeying mercies so that they too can be here in your courts. And for those who will be online with us worshiping, we crave your blessings towards them. So, Father, we just leave everything now in your care and in your care. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much, Sister Henry. For years I've been listening to Sister Henry pray and like those two verbs that she used, cramp and paralyze. But I prefer use kill. Because when you cramp and paralyze the plans of the enemy, it's still alive. So kill it. Kill every plan of the evil one. No life. Um, all right, so this was supposed to be a continuation of last week, Youth Day. And we didn't have enough time last week, so we decided to continue this week. Problem with this week is that our topic is why our teenagers leave the church. And right now, I see only probably one teenager or two. Brother Cliff's children, Ethan and what's your daughter's name again? Leah. So we only have two teenagers. So um, so Sister Ernie putting up her hand that she's gone back into time. So she's a teenager. But I guess we would, for the most part, probably be appealing in terms of teenager, appealing to an online audience. Most of us here are adults, but it's still relevant to us because, yes, not only that, but our teenagers leaving the church has a lot to do with the adults in the church. And so we're going to look at this. We started last week, but let us see if we can fly through the slides that we went through last week. This is a study that was done by Pastor Roger Dudley in the Adventist Church, and it's a 10-year study. And this is what they came up with as to why our teenagers were leaving the church. And this should be of concern to us. After all, they are our children. And the study highlights that, when they reach 20 or mid-20s or so, they leave. So we're going to see what is causing this hemorrhage in our church. And if you have a point to make or something to say, you can use the mic. And if you're online, you can send your chat. We will try and see how much we can accommodate it as we speak about this topic. So last week we looked at the fact that some of these teenagers says that they were frustrated with the church. They have lost faith in the Adventist organization. And then members in my church were so cold, I had to stop attending for 2 years. The Adventist church tends to be the opposite of Christ. I feel that the church is a farce. And may I say that, as a disclaimer, that, some of these reasons that the teenagers give, they're their reasons. And we are not saying that these reasons are necessarily, I don't want to say true, but are necessarily the, the, yes, a reflection of what the church is in general. And the question was, we looked at this last week, if you have ever dropped out of church membership or stopped attending services, what were the main reasons that caused you to do this? So we asked our young people this pivotal question. If you have ever dropped out of church or stopped attending services, what were the main reasons that caused you to do this? And some of the answers that we get have been categorized, one of which is alienation. And the study found out that a major theme shared by the dropouts, teenagers, was that they feel unaccepted by their churches. Many describe their church as very cold, aloof, and unfriendly. And of course, last week we said this was not so with this church here, this local church. I think it was Elisha that reminded us, if anything, this church is too friendly. And other reasons given, I would rather spend Sabbath on my own than try to carve out a place in the ice. And that ice was, of course, what was that referring to? It's a metaphor referring to what? Coldness. The church, and it's not the temperature, especially here in South Florida, because it's always hot. No one seems happy there. It's like they have to be there or something. So that young person is saying that, some people just come because they just have to be there. This one we looked at last week, this young lady, that she was very active in the church, chair of the nominating committee. And as a matter of fact, I have never seen, the only time I've ever seen somebody else as chair of the nominating committee than the pastor is way back in my home church. And you wouldn't guess who was the chair of the nominating committee. The pastor that you have now, Pastor Wilson. I remember him being given the chair. So, Sabbath school superintendent and church pianist, she said she was. She said, or he. I was on the rostrum during the divine house service every other week. This young person said, I was Sabbath school teacher, etc. So instead of putting the same clique of older people, youth and women, into the leadership positions, the nominating committee decided to inject a mixture of older people, youth and women, into the leadership positions. And this is what happened. The older clique was what? Infuriated. That word means what? Vex, as my granny would say. Vex. Refused to participate in the positions for which they were nominated and attended other churches. I had supported them for years, and when they had an opportunity to support me, they basically thought that I wasn't ready to be active. Now, last week I said I resonated with this one because in my home church, we had a first elder who was elder for 13 years, consecutive years. And the church decided, and I remembered that a few young people were on the nominating committee, and they decided that they wanted a change. And so they chose me as first elder. And I resonate with the part that said that all those years I was an elder supporting, but when I became first elder, I didn't get the support that I had given. And so I identify very much with this part of the study. From the responses, I think this is where we stopped last week, given to the question posed, it is clear that these young people were searching for sincerity. They were searching for genuineness and intelligent meaning for their lives. They are desperately seeking, and I use that verb, change it from the word to are, because they are still here. Young people, they are desperately seeking for love, acceptance, and spiritual depth. Yet many are disappointed with the spiritual resources they have been offered. Now, most of them aren't leaving the church because of dispute with doctrine. They are confused by the tension between the truth of Adventism and the way they see it being lived out by the older members of our congregations. Now, I want to pause here because this again resonated with me, because I soon come to your sister, I didn't grow up in a Christian home, so to speak. I, for the most part, I was brought up by my mom. She was the mainstay. And we believed in God. We went to church. She sent us to church. And when I became a Seventh-day Adventist, I was kind of naive because I was in my mid-20s, and I kind of took it for granted that, everybody was Christian. And I learned that it wasn't so. And it was very, 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 very disappointing for me as a young man when I began to find out that, some of these people are so hard to deal with. And, but we kept going to church. Yes, Sister Jordan, use the mic, because there are some people online who wants to hear what is being said.
Yes, so this is a really, I wouldn't say touchy, but this is a strong topic for me because I left the church when I was about 16 or 17.
16 or 17.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I left because in my teenage mind, at the time, I felt that there was a lot of hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the elders, because sometimes we see children and we kind of overlook them sometimes, and we don't know that children are actually watching what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're active in the church, so you'll tend to look up to persons in the church. And I saw where the older members, they would get on you, the younger one, for a lot of things, but you observe them doing things that you know that they're not supposed to be doing, and what they're doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. And so my teenage mind could not really understand at the time that it was not about them, but it was my relationship with Christ. Mm-hmm. And so I left because I couldn't deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Were you from a Seventh-day Adventist family?
Yes, Seventh-day Adventist Church. Well,
family?
my mom was Seventh-day Adventist. My dad said that he was Jehovah's Witness and he read his Bible.
Okay.
But he wasn't a practicing Christian.
Yeah. I'm just trying to ascertain as to when you say you left, what does that look like? What did that look like?
I stopped going to church
Okay.
and stopped participating because I used to be very active in church, in Pathfinder, and all of that. And I stopped participating. Of course, my mother was not happy with it, but it was a decision of both parents. And my father said that he was not going to force me to go to church if I didn't want to.
So you went back into the world and doing the things
Basically. Well, I didn't go back into the world. I went into the world and discovered new things.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
I grew up in the church.
I'm asking you this question because, I want us to see that these things are real and we have evidence of people who have undergone those kind of treatments. I gave my experience. Sister is giving hers, and Sister Carr gave her experience last week, and there were some other people. So this study done by Pastor Dudley kind of resonates with a lot of people who join the church in their young age, growing up. So they say they are confused by the tension between the truth of Adventism and the way they see it being lived out by the older members of our congregations. Exactly what Sister Jordan just described. They place a high amount of credibility, they referring to the young people, on relationships and action. These young adults, here comes, see through pretense. I'm going to pause here. Speak to mommy and daddy.
Yeah, I was about to say say that.
Go ahead.
When it comes to parenting and having our children, they see who they see at home is not the same person sometimes that they see at church, and it's conflicting. And we don't realize that they are really paying attention. And so we are losing credibility with our children when we are living that double life. They see when we come to church, or we are
sanctimonious.
yes, very holy, and it's happy Sabbath, and it is this and is that, and we pray the longest prayers, and we are there. But they know, and they will snicker with their friends, and we know where that leads to. We can't even speak to them at church because they don't respect that. So we have to be true at home and everywhere that we go.
Yeah. So, and it is instructive to us as parents because, there might be teenagers and they can't go out on their own when they see this kind of double agent kind of thing that the parents are playing. But as soon as they reach into their 20s and they get a job and they're going to leave you, or when they go to college, they are not satisfied with the talk. That should have been not satisfied with the talk of Adventism. They want to see the walk. So if we should translate this into another reason why they leave the church, is that when they come to church, there's a tension between how the members, the tension between the truth of Adventism and the way they see it lived out in the members of the church. And they see through that pretense, and they say this is hypocrisy. Here's another. Oh, this one is on the positive side. I labeled this person the steady Eddie. I've never dropped out because a few older people always made sure I was involved while I was younger. I got used to that and had fun, so I stayed even when I thought of leaving. I tell you this, my friends, I don't know, but some of the experiences that I've had in church, if it was one time, I just tell them to go about their business and I go about my business. But this young person is saying that, in spite of the fact that there was not a lot that was right with the church, his or her local church, she still persevered and she stayed, or he stayed. And in staying, they were involved in things, which leads us to another thing. We have to give them something to do. We just can't have them here like statues. Get them involved. I remember when I was a youngster, well, I was in my 20s when I became a Seventh-day Adventist. And was baptized, don't know anybody too much. And so has AY finished through the door because I have to catch my bus to go home because I live far from church. And a young lady stopped me one Saturday evening and spoke to me, and she said, every time you're just leaving church like that, stay a little bit on fellowship, man. And I started doing that. And in short time, I became the AY leader. And from that, I became an elder, and I just started to just excel in church. So give them something to do. Get them involved. Find out what their strengths are, their talents that they can use in the cause of Christ. And even when they find that things not so right, but because they're engaged and things like that, chances are they will stay. Even though this young woman felt like leaving at times, she remained involved, not because of her conviction of the truth of Adventist doctrine, but because of the sense of being needed and what? Valued. She was bound to her church through the power of what? Relationship. Relationship. A lot of my very good friends are in the church because we have found this relationship. And when I was thinking of coming to America, because by now you know that Pastor Wilson and myself are very good friends from Jamaica. And we used to go to the same church. We used to be elders in the same church. And we used to just work together in that church, do a lot of things. So when my chance came for me to come and live in America, my mom lived in New York. But I knew where I wanted to live. I wanted to live in Florida, where my friend was. I wasn't even thinking of my brother who lived in Florida, because I have a brother who lives there. I was really thinking of my brother from another mother. And he came here, and my wife mentioned my brother. I didn't stay with my brother when I just came here. Stay with Pastor Wilson and his family. That's the bond that we had. So it's about relationship. And I know some of you have formed some long life relationship in the church. And that too is for the young people to form relationships. Sometimes you knock head with some people. I kind of lost my way in high school because as I stepped through the gates of my high school, man, I knock head with I knock head with some youngsters, and I don't even want to remember it. Man, but we want to form relationship with progressive people. Vast majority of young adults who dropped out of the church responded that they didn't think their church made a difference in their lives. They perceived the church as either not interested or simply clueless to their generation needs. Now this one is big. I wish I had some young people to ask them how they feel about this one. Or maybe I could ask those who are here. You want to respond? You don't? Ethan is sleeping, so wish I had some young people. Who? Yes, Sister AY leader. Yeah, give her a mic, because
Okay. So prior to the incident that I shared last week about the elder that told me that I should not do the welcome again because there's someone more competent, I also shared because my mom and my dad weren't Christians. I went to church with my grandma, right? And so on Friday evenings, I would be preparing for the Sabbath, but they're doing their own thing. So, but my dad always ensures that I'm not watching TV, none of that, and my mother as well, because they weren't Christian. But I grew up wearing jewelry because I did not have a say whether I wanted to get my ears pierced or not. From the second day after birth, they took me and got it pierced.
wow.
So, yeah, so I don't know what it was like without jewelry. So I shared that with someone at the church, told them that, because even the day when I got baptized, my mom was saying, you're not ready. And I said, I'm ready. And when I got baptized in the earrings, and then after they took them out, and I found it very hard. Started looking at myself and saying, I'm not pretty without them and all of that. And I shared that while I was going to high school with them at church as well. I'm saying I'm having a challenge because I feel like I'm not beautiful without the earring. And I shared it with him, but I didn't want him to tell everybody else in church. And he went up and told the entire church about what I shared with them, that I was having a challenge. I told them that I find myself sometimes putting in the jewelry and looking in the mirror, and then I take them out back, and I'm like, I know it's not right, so I can't leave the house in it. But sometimes on Sundays or when I'm home, I have them in. And my mother always telling me that you can't hide from God, so you need to, so I share that with them. But after I left, every time, like when I started university, every time I pass the shop where they do piercing, I stop and get a piercing until my ears was full, started on other parts. And my husband, who is not a Christian, said to me, take them out because you look the same without them. Start taking them out. Yeah. So he was the one who told me to stop wearing, because I had piercing in my navel, piercing in my ears, and he told me to take them out because I'm beautiful without them. And my grandma started to share scriptures and all those things with me about the jewelry. And I shared it with him also. And I stopped wearing them, but it wasn't the church that influenced me not to wear them. They actually pushed me away.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how old were you at the time, Sister Rita?
I was in college because it's when I left home and went to university, I started to wear them
Okay.
like nonstop. Like even when I go home, I didn't even have a care in the world who would want to see me in them. I just had them in.
So by that time, when you were by that time, how long were you baptized in the church?
When I stopped going, I got baptized when I was 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many years you were in the church by that time?
Until high school. I think I stopped going. Let me see. Was probably I was almost leaving high school
So it's
when I
probably less
stopped.
than 10 years or
Yeah.
so. So now, after those less than 10 years, I'm going to respond to this. Did you, as a teenager, thought that the church made a difference in your life? Going to church, did it make a difference in your life?
Well, I must say that made a difference in terms of my foundation. I knew what was right, and that's what brought me back. Because
Okay.
probably if I didn't have these principles, I wouldn't have returned.
Okay.
But because my grandma took me to church and I learned what is right, what is wrong, sometimes I felt that guilt, even when I was going to university wearing the jewelry. I still went to church on Sabbath. As a matter of fact, I used to take my husband to church.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wasn't a Christian, but every Sabbath, like we'd say, which church are we going? And I felt guilty even going in the jewelry and those things because I knew what was right.
So as a young person, did you feel that the church was clueless in terms of the needs of your generation as a young person?
Yes, they were clueless because
Yes.
it was not, I wasn't the only one struggling with those things in the church. I had other young people who we would socialize together that were struggling as well. Because when I went to get my first piercing, it was me and one of my church member. Yeah,
Yeah.
we
So-
went together.
Yes. Because this is one of the things that after nearly 40 years in the church, it's one of the things that I have oftentimes heard that, we don't understand the young people. And because we don't understand them, then we tend to drive them away. And it keeps on recurring. We don't understand them. And since this modern era, we have been divided into baby boomers, Generation X, Gen Z, millennials, and all that kind of a thing. And what that is saying to us is that each generation is different, and so we need to take time to understand each other And in that understanding, we are not going to lower the standards of the church or discard them, but we just need to understand that some of the things that I, as a boomer, would appreciate that my millennial or generation Gen Z child would not. Those are not things that they would um, gravitate towards or that side of it. So there is this uh, dissonance, they call it in theological circles, that exists between older folk and young people, and it transcends even to the leadership of the church. We don't understand them. And because we don't understand them, and we don't know how to deal with them. I've had opportunities to be around kindergartens, and it is a learning experience for me because I'm seeing teachers and I'm seeing how they deal with the kindergartens, and I'm saying, okay. And whenever time they do anything, you better make sure that's amazing. That's you boost them up and feel good, and so it helps me to kind of know how to deal with my grandson. Yeah, I have a grandson, and I'm gonna have sons. I have two grandsons now. Yes, one of my grandsons was born yesterday. Yes. So, yes. So the young people in our church feel that I wish more of them were here. That because they are irrelevant. They are not being used, and they are misunderstood. And because of that, they walk. And they go elsewhere. And we say all kind of things, but some of the times it's because we don't understand. Nothing for my age. Here it goes. Lack of activities for young adults. Boring. When I was just baptized, brethren, my church never have any AC and that kind of thing. This is luxury. When I go to church sometimes, most times I just sleep because the place was so hot, and sometimes the preachers are so boring, brethren. And oftentimes, we see young people would be looking at Rasta. Who's going to preach? Who's going to preach? Who's going to preach? Because it better not be elder so-and-so, because it will put you to sleep. And but supplementing that, we had a lot of activities, and we had beach trips, and we had we had activities, AY programs, and we had Pastor Wilson again was a good AY leader. And I remember he would have this AY setting where he would have somebody as a newscaster reading the news and weather report and that sort of a thing. And so I remember one parent came to Pastor Wilson and said, listen, elder, I want you to involve my daughter in the AY, because AY was booming and young people were coming back and young people were participating in AY. Nice. So we had that. Brethren, when I came to America, the rest is history. Many young adults felt their church was irrelevant to their social needs. To their what? Put a lot of emphasis on the spiritual needs of the young people. But they are young. They need this social outlet to express themselves. And so we have to give them that. Because one of the reasons why they leave is because they are saying that we are not cognizant of their social needs. We are not catering for that. Sister AY leader, I'm glad you're here, so that you can improve upon that if it needs to be. Many also felt that their spiritual growth needs were not met. So it's not only the social, but only spiritual. Also the spiritual. I'm tired of hearing the same old sermons. There's so much I want to know about God, but I never found any of it out at church. I'm tired of hearing the same old sermons. There's so much I want to know about God, but I never found any of it out at church. I'm sorry young people are not here, because I would ask them if this resonates with them in their church. So let's hear from the adult, because this can resonate with you too. What do you think about this one? Is this a legitimate reason why? I think this is a legitimate reason for young people to, I mean, it's not a good reason to leave the church, but you think, is the reason legit? Talk to me now. Talk to me. This reason. So they're tired of, in other words, it's under the caption irrelevance. And they're saying, summarize, what they are hearing in sermons is not relevant to them. There's so much more that they want to know, but it's not coming through out of the sermon.
Pastor, I beg to differ with that one. You know why? Because I
Yes.
remember when I was in my teenage years, and Bible class, I used to like shy away from Bible class. Because like I said, when I certain hill, I go up to do Bible class. Mercy. So we don't want to hear it. We don't, because either you sleep or something else. Anyway, so I never used to go to Bible class, but there was this other elder. He used to beat us and say, "Man, go to Bible class." And then after a while, we start going to Bible class. Because we don't go to church until Bible class finish. Then when it's AY time, that's when all of us as young people go inside. Right? And what used to happen is this now. When I started visiting Bible class, that's when I started to learn more about God. And that's when things changed for me, for my personal life. Right? And so I've seen some other young people say the same thing like what's on the board. That there's so much I want to know about God, but I never found out any of it at church. And the reason for that is because we do not participate in Bible study. And what I find even now, when I started having my son started growing up, and a lot of the young people who grew up with him, I found out that a lot of them now turn adults, young adults now, they leave the church. Right? They leave the church. And the reason for that is that they were just growing up to the church, but the church was not in them.
Yeah.
Because they don't participate in Bible study. And that's what made a difference in my life. So I was able to make a difference in my son's life. Get involved in Bible study. Because if you don't get in Bible study for yourself, then you will just go to church and you'll find out that you don't know anything about God. And that's what happened.
Yes.
Okay. Also, as it relates to the Sabbath school lesson, there is a lot. The doctrines of the church are taught at every stage for the children. So they are learning the same things that we are learning as adults. It's just broken down for them in a simpler form in the Sabbath school lesson. And if parents would take the time to ensure that the children learn it in a simpler form, so that as they grow older, whatever questions they have, they can ask them from their childhood and get an understanding. I remember my daughter used at primary school in Jamaica, when she was in grade 3 and 4, she was having Bible class at school with her friends, discussing what the Bible said and coming home and asking me, Mommy, what does this say? What does this mean? You know? And she was holding her own at school. You know, so parents don't seem to understand the importance of these tools that we have been given as a church. And we don't, ensure that our children are familiarizing themselves with the material that the church has given us. We put it as we get a quarterly, and sometimes when you go home with the quarterly, where's the quarterly? Nobody knows where it is, because the parents don't put the emphasis on it. And they spend the time studying everything else and watching everything else, except spending some time going through the lesson with their children. Don't just allow them to even do it on their own. There must be a time of accountability where you bring the child or your children together and sit with them and go through the lesson together, so that you know that they're understanding what they are being taught. And they will ask questions. They have a lot of questions to ask. You know?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Give her a mic. Meanwhile, give Sister Jordan a mic.
Oh,
Go ahead, sis.
okay. I am really sorry that the youths are not here, because
So am I.
it would be interesting
To
to
hear
hear
from them.
specifically what needs the church is not addressing.
You're right. Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
I know that every generation is different. Personally, for me, I grew up in the church. I was born in the church.
Oh,
So,
blessed are thee.
but I never, there was no disconnect as far as I'm concerned, that because we were younger, the programs of the church weren't catering to us. I left the church for a little while, even though I was telling myself that I was still in church, because I wasn't doing. I said, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, and whatever. And it's not because my spiritual needs were not being fulfilled at church. I just wanted to have a little taste of something outside, you know. So I do understand that generations different. We wear different clothes, maybe social activities may be different, but as it relates to the message, it hasn't changed. Yes, the way we project or present the message, we can change that. We can, but like I said, the youths, we need to hear from them, because that's the only way we're going to be able to help them.
Yeah.
If that is the reason they are not staying in the church.
Yeah.
Because I don't have teenagers anymore, but what I'm getting from them, my two younger kids, they want a different kind of relationship. To them, you don't have to come to church.
Yes.
They have their kind of relationship with God, and that's what they're saying. They don't need to come to church.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we're going to change that.
Okay. So I take it that your children are no longer in the church. No. Okay. So yes, so the struggle is real. The problem is real. Sister Jordan. Let Sister Jordan speak like she has the mic.
Yes, so in terms of the irrelevance that we're still exploring, I'm tired of hearing the same old sermons. Like I told you before, I left 16, 17. I'm sitting there and thinking about it. I think it was a bit later, like 7. And you might ask what's in a year, but I think it's about 17, 18. Most of what I learned about God was not from the sermons that were preached. As Sister Cowan said, she mentioned Sabbath school. For me, it was Sabbath school. My Bible foundation and Bible knowledge is from Sabbath school as a child growing up. And it was a vast knowledge because I didn't come back into the church until I wasted maybe like 30 years of my life out there. So I didn't come back into the church until December 31st, 2015.
But you said 30 years
Yes.
or 13?
30.
30?
Yes.
You're dating yourself, you know. So just be aware. All right.
I'm not telling you my age. But anyway, yes, so I did waste a lot of time, but at the same time when I came back and as I'm reading my Bible again, it's like everything is just coming back to me. So I had that strong foundation, you see, not from the sermons, but from Sabbath school as a child, studying the lesson, knowing the memory verses. We used to do our 13 Sabbaths. It's the same. We come up here, we know all the verses.
Were you in Pathfinder?
I was a Pathfinder also. I love Pathfindering. I loved my Pathfinder director, Clive. You remember Clive Delia? Man, I love Clive. I wish everybody in the church was like Clive. But at that point, I just felt that they just weren't meeting my needs. You know, I could not relate to them at some point in time. I don't know if Clive had left church. Did Clive leave? And then he came back. But Clive was one of my mentors. I love Clive to the extent where when I started driving at first, Clive was one of my driving instructor.
Okay.
You see. And is he around there? Yeah, I want to say hello to him. Thinking about him right now, I miss Clive. Yes, but I'm telling you, from a child growing up and Sabbath school lessons, studying my
That was your
Bible,
foundation.
that's where I got my foundation from.
Pastor Cowan.
Okay, wait, because I think we have a response online.
Yes, online they have a question here. It says, Pastor, one young lady picture was seen on Snapchat in clothing not fit for a child of God. She's a part of the church offices. However, she blamed it on her peers, not the church.
One young lady was what?
Seen on Snapchat in clothing not fit for a child of God. And she's part of the church offices. However, she blamed it on her peers, not the church.
Okay. All right. Okay, all right. We can live with that.
And secondly, I want to add on that as a parent of the two young ones here, I'm trying different methods of ways to get them involved in the church. And the memory text that they did this morning, I made sure that they had the information that they needed. We got it late. However, what I learned from it is that if I involve myself in it with them, and I had them do mock stages, and they seemed to be more involved and more willing to learn more. And I remember you did a Bible study when you showed us Chosen. I think it was Chosen.
Yeah.
Yes. I ended up starting to read the Bible with Leah, the book of Matthew, and then I ended up I said, let me look at Chosen to see what it's about. We watched it together, and because I get them in the middle of the week, and she was so interested in it after reading the first chapter, And then watching the first couple minutes of Chosen, the next week she came back. She was like, "Dad, I'm on the 4th season." I was like,
Okay.
what? So I think being as a parent, we do have to show some involvement with the kids and guiding them with the story, because some of the things are complicated, and when your parent and someone you're familiar with, that especially at home, breaks it down for you, it can clear a lot of things up because they have that bond with you, and they'll continue. What I noticed, they can continue come back and ask me questions.
Yeah.
So I think that's is very important for things like that. Is very important to keep the kids involved
Yeah.
in the church.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
And as it relates to sermon, because what this is under the irrelevance section of this presentation. So, as preachers, we are taught that we must be aware of the spiritual needs of our congregation and relate to that in our sermons. And I don't think that sermons were meant to be exhaustive Bible studies, so to speak. So when I hear Sister Jordan say she learned a lot about the Bible from Sabbath school, that's good. That's where you should be getting most of what, apart from your private Bible study. But there is so much and so little that a preacher can say in the time that he has to kind of bring out certain things. So that is as far as that is concerned. Now let us see how we can finish up this section before Vespers. The sermons were too shallow, and I wasn't getting any deep food. I've been in church all my life and know most of the superficial stuff. Okay, that's along there. Now, intolerance. The members were a bunch of ostentatious, holier-than-thou, self-righteous jerks. This might be, well, I don't see, I don't know. How you feel about this? Is this a good reason? Yeah, yeah.
Pastor, what do you think of this happened? What do you think of it? So, I had a cousin. He was very bad, but he decided to give his heart to the Lord. And when they were doing when the elders were going up shaking his hand and so forth, there was a board member, and she says, "I'm not going up to shake his hand because by tomorrow he's out of the church."
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
bad. That's really bad. Yeah, I'm bad. Yes, that's one of the jerks. Yeah, ladies, this sin not at his feet. But that's one of the things. Yeah, it can get really bad in church, but that's bad. So another says too many people are criticizing others, but never themselves. That this is common. I was greatly discouraged with the people and how supposed Christians could be so rude, unaccepting, and cruel. This is a reality. Nobody's not going to say amen. Sometimes we can be rude, brethren, and cruel. And I'm telling you, I'm in this thing nearly 40 years, and I know what I'm talking about. And, young people are no fools. They see what's happening. I believe our church is too self-righteous. They seem to condemn everyone else, it seems. Much too superficial. We had something like that before. Convenience. I was working 13-hour night shifts and was missing church because I couldn't stay awake during the services when I worked on Friday nights at the hospital. So, the work. I listened this week to a presentation. Tokenization and as it relates to religious liberty. Now, I've never heard of tokenization. But when the presenter started, she said, money is illusional and wealth is illusional. And then she goes on to say that she's talking within the context of the church, that we as Christians we give too much emphasis. I think that's the word she used on wealth and money. So when I just read this, what I'm seeing is that here is a young person missing church services because of work. And I'm saying that she's not saying that we shouldn't work, but she's helping us to realize that. And as I thought about it, I was thinking that, listen, most of us, some of us might, as hard as we work, we will never become rich. Most of us never become. We're not going to be rich, and we are going to always have to be working to make ends meet. Now, if I'm right with that, then check this. If that is the case, then to have put all this emphasis and energy and effort on something that is not going to make you become rich or financially dependent, so to speak, independent, at the expense of a relationship with Christ and eternal life, then you see what I am saying. No, we are not saying to leave your job. What we are saying is that, listen, maybe we get this thing twisted. I hear the pastor sometimes begging you to come to Wednesday night meetings. And he knows that you're tired after a day's job and thing, but still try and come. So we don't want to be no fools in these last days, brethren. We need to be balanced. And we need to understand what is priority. I couldn't stay awake during the services when I worked on Friday nights. It's not a good reason. As much as it's a good thing that you're doing. Saturday was my only day off, so I stayed home and slept. You see what I'm saying? Is this a good reason? So we need to understand ourselves, brethren. What is it that we want? Why is it that we are Christians? And so if we find ourselves sacrificing the relationship that we should have with Christ at the expense of our jobs and that sort of a thing, and we've got a problem. We've got a problem, and we have to deal with it. All right, I think it's time for Vespers, so I stopped coming to church because I have to get up early on weekends. Why can't there be an afternoon service? That's another reason. And here's a conclusion. The message is clear. These young adults want the church to be their friend. They seek relevance in the heart realm of warmth and acceptance. They crave a church that takes a personal interest in them and their well-being. They don't seem to be looking for the individualistic worship, but one of what? Genuine, involved worship. It also appears that these dropouts are shouting that they want a church that makes a demonstrated impact in the world, a church that focuses not on judging or condemning, but rather on service, healing, and redemption. At the time of this survey, Chris Hagan was a seminary student. Here are some of his reflections and recommendations. Young people want to see actions. 2, young people want to have friends and bonds at church. 3, young people crave honesty. They don't want phonies. 4, they want to see openness in sharing honest struggles and failures and how Christ make a difference in dealing with them. Young people want to be involved and have their skills be valued and respected. Young people are disgusted with discussions over jewelry and standards when they see lack of interest by the church over social injustices. You know what that means? Spend a lot of time talking about young people jewelry, but the marginalized out there, we are not talking about that and seeing to that. Young people want to be challenged intellectually. You know, when I just left college, before I went, I used to talk about the brethren won't understand these things. And I thought to myself, what do you mean the brethren won't understand these things? I think they can understand these things. You know them. So sometimes you'll hear myself and Pastor Wilson, we are saying that this is how it is said in the Greek, and we try to break it down because we know you can understand. After you're not fools. Young people are not impressed by the powerless works of the church. They want to see hard gospel. Oh, that's it. Young people are not impressed by the powerless works of the church. They want to see hard gospel. They want us to be genuine. They want us to understand them. They want to belong. And they don't like superficiality. And so, as we close this evening, brethren, and they say why. It is real, as we have heard from some of you and your experiences. This church is not immune to it. A lot of young people, more young people used to be here, and they are not. And so we've got a problem. The thing for us is to how we're going to deal with it so that our churches will stop be hemorrhaging from this curse that has befallen most of our Seventh-day Adventist churches. May God help us, especially our leaders. May we pray, beseech Almighty God for wisdom as to how to keep our young people, not only in the church, but to keep them in a relationship with Jesus Christ. God bless you.